and thanks for listening to the Adulting is Easy podcast. This is Lauren, and I manage the Adulting is Easy blog and podcast, which can be found at realadultingiseasy.com. And the podcast can be found pretty much anywhere you listen. Please take a second to hit the follow button wherever you're listening, if you can safely do so and you're not driving or something like that. So I'm joined today by Steve Cummings, a 34-year-old American expat living in Taipei, Taiwan. Living in Taiwan has allowed Steve to save money, invest more, travel more, and even meet his Australian expat wife. The two work as English teachers by day and use time off of work to enjoy things like hiking, traveling, and working on his blog. The Frugal Expat personal finance blog started as a way to help Steve's friends and family learn more about investing, and he now hopes he can reach even more people. Thanks for joining me, Steve.
Thank you for having me on, Lauren. I am glad to join you, and let's get talking about some personal finance.
Yeah, I'm excited. I started Real Adulting is Easy for very similar reasons. Just got interested in personal finance and just was like, you know what, I'm going to write stuff down. So when people ask me questions, I can just start sending them my blogs.
Yeah, that's kind of like how I started. I was helping people out with personal finance stuff, and my wife was like, "Steve, why don't you just write this stuff down, put it on the internet, and then people don't always have to ask you questions."
Exactly. So today we're going to combine forces then and make adulting a bit easier for these listeners by discussing a personal finance topic. And actually, we're going to discuss a few personal finance topics today, kind of introductory, foundational, level setting personal finance topics. So we're going to talk about the 50-30-20 budget, the 4% rule, and net worth. Before we jump into that, though, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you became passionate about personal finance?
That's a great question. So I would say 5 years ago in 2016, I was just sitting at my regular day job, just putting things in the computer, sitting at a desk job. And I realized, life kind of sucked. I wasn't getting paid that much. I wasn't experiencing as much as I could. And I had a lot of downtime. And so I just started reading about blogs, and I realized, oh, man, I should go and travel the world. But the one thing I didn't have was money. And I realized at that point, if I want to travel, I need to be able to learn how to save money, learn how to invest money, because if I can have that money pay me as I travel, then I can travel more. And so that kind of opened up a rabbit hole full of just finance blogs. And I started learning more and more about personal finance, learning about how to invest, and learning how to even budget my money to be able to do more traveling. So my main focus was travel, but then it kind of focused into saving, investing, and kind of trying to reach a point where I am financially independent.
That's awesome. So travel kind of started out as your why.
Yeah. It was, I needed money. And in order to travel more, if I could just keep that money coming in through something where I don't have to work, that sounded like a great idea.
What is your favorite investment?
My favorite investment would be index funds. I am heavily invested into the ETF VTI by Vanguard. It is a total stock market index fund ETF. And so right now I've got about 88 to 90% of my money invested into that.
Nice. That's very similar to what the Simple Path to Wealth book would tell you to do.
It's one of my favorites.
There you go. Yeah. We have VTI too. We have a lot of VOO as well. We're definitely Vanguard fans in this house. So that's awesome. So you're like, hey, I want to travel. What do I need to do? I need money to travel. And rather than just saving a bunch of money and then spending it every time I travel, how about I invest it so it throws off some more money so I can travel some more?
Yeah, that was actually the plan.
But now you're just perpetually gone.
Yeah.
Moved to another country.
It was like, I can't just wait. So I decided just to buy a ticket and leave.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, you've been there 4 years, so it sounds like it's going really well. You met your wife, so that's absolutely amazing. So at what point did you kind of decide to write about the three topics we're talking about today, the 50-30-20 budget, the 4% rule, and net worth? I noticed you've kind of covered all of them in your blogs.
Yeah. So I started my blog in July of 2020, and um, you referenced The Simple Path to Wealth from J.L. Collins. And I was just thinking, you know, as I write this blog, I need to kind of set a base limit, a base for my blog and for helping people out. And so my first thought was, first of all, I need to teach them like the 4% rule. I also
Yep.
need to teach them about like trying to get to a point on their net worth where they can hit the 4% rule, or basically
Yeah.
hit financial independence where 4% of their portfolio can actually pay for their life. And then I realized, budgeting is a huge thing that people just don't know how to do. I mean, they have money, they spend money, but then all of a sudden they realize, where did all my money go? And they don't have a way to separate money into different categories for like wants, needs, or even savings. And so they just spend it. And at the end of the month, if they don't have any more money left, they realize, well, I guess I can't spend any more money. Or they'll use credit cards and rack up massive amounts
Hmm.
of credit card debts.
So why don't we dive into the 50/30/20 budget then?
Yeah, that sounds like a great spot to start.
All right. So you hit on it there when you said wants, needs, and savings. The 50/30/20 stands for percentages, right?
It does. So basically, you take the amount of money, your income, and you split that up into three different categories. So the first category would be needs. And this is your largest one. This would be 50% of your money. And needs would be like paying a mortgage payment, paying your rent, paying food, even healthcare. That would be a need. And then you would split the next part into wants, and that would be about 30%. So let's say you like to go to the gym. That could be a want. I mean, it's not necessarily a need because you could exercise outside for free. But if you really want to go to a gym with classes, maybe that will be a want. Or even maybe you like to watch Netflix. It is not a need. You don't have to watch Netflix, but you want to watch Netflix. So you pay the $10 or $15 for Netflix, and that is part of that 30%. And the last one would be 20%, which would be your saving or even paying down your debt. That last part is just putting it either in a savings account, investing that money, or even paying down mortgage debt or credit card debt, or even like if you have a debt on like a car loan. So that's that 20%.
Is that about what you and your wife do now? 50/30/20?
No, we don't do that. We what we do is probably, I would say, 40, 40, 60. So we save about 60% of our money and we spend the other 40.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that I made that point to say the 50/30/20 budget I think is an amazing framework, right? And what you were saying about the 30%, there are some things that I think get really blurry between wants and needs, right? But the wants, I think it's like if the crap hit the fan, what could you cut, right? And you could cut your gym, you could cut your Netflix. You can't, I mean, maybe you can cut your rent a little bit, but you're probably not going to cut your rent to zero, right? Cut your mortgage to zero if you house hack. Hey, little plug for house hacking
Oh,
there, right?
nice.
But this idea of categorize your expenses into needs, wants, and then saving, right? And then try to stick to that. And the 20% saving, I think, is really, really bare minimum. That's work your whole life and retire at 60, 65 type stuff, right, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, most people will save like 10%, 5%, and that's not even going to help you out when you hit 65. 20%, like you said, it's like bare minimum to have a comfortable retirement.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to retire any earlier, you need to save more than that. We try to stick to the at least 50% savings rate as well. And that leaves us kind of in the FIRE category, right? The financial dependence retire early group. I think technically that starts at like 50% saving.
Yeah.
But whatever works for you, right? But the point of a budget is you should know where your money is going. And if you've never tracked it before, you'd probably be surprised when you start doing it. You probably, if you had to guess these categories and what you spend and write them down, you probably wouldn't get them all right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When I talk with people about where their money is going, I said, let's first start with the bare basics. You need to write down where you're spending your money every single day, and that can show you where your money is going to. If you're spending 50% of your money going out to eat, maybe it's time to cut some of that out.
Yeah, or if you're spending too much on rent or too much on your car, I mean, that takes a little longer, but you need to be able to look at those things. And you need to align your budget to your goals, right? If your goal is to retire early, you need to align your budget in such a way that will allow you to do that.
Yeah, and even if you're in massive debt right now, if your goal is
Hmm.
to kind of get out of that debt, you need to start cutting out your wants, or even trying to minimize some of those need part. But like you said, it's sometimes hard to bring down rent payments or car loan payments. But with your wants, if you need to get out some of that debt, it's time to cut some of that out, cut out that fat, and allow you to kind of get out of the debts, start saving more, and start trying to push your financial the envelope instead of from being negative, start getting into the positive. Start having
Hmm.
some money where you realize, okay, I'm feeling good. I don't have to stress about money now.
Right, right. And what I have seen too is some of the people that start out their adult life in debt, whether that's, student loan debt or credit card debt or whatever it is, they actually become some of the best savers because when they pay off their debt, they replace that with just kind of a quote unquote savings payment.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I had student loan debt, and I mean, living on a frugal budget, I I didn't just increase my lifestyle. It was more like, okay, I can still live the same lifestyle that I'm living now. I just put the extra money towards savings and investing, and then realize, oh, I'm investing a lot of money. Wow, this really gets the ball rolling.
Exactly. I say this all the time. Pretend you make less than you do and live your life as if, right? If you make 80, pretend you make 60 and live your life the way somebody who makes 60 does, right? I mean, you'll be way better off than the vast, 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 vast majority of the population.
Yeah, exactly. And most people, I mean, they make 80, they'll spend 80 and,
Or 85 or
or
90.
85 or yeah.
So that's awesome. So let's transition then to talking about net worth and what it is, because what this budget allows you to do, whether it's 50, 30, 20, or some kind of variation therein, that allows you to build that net worth. And the net worth, although it's not completely exactly tied to when you get to retire and things like that, it's a pretty close correlation. And so tracking net worth is a really good way to know kind of if you're improving financially. So, and that's what the whatever your savings portion is, whether it's the 20% of the 50, 30, 20, or something else, that's what really ends up driving that net worth. So why don't you tell us a little bit about net worth, Steve?
So net worth is basically if you just take your assets, you minus your liabilities will equal your net worth. So if I have, let's say I have $200,000 invested, and then I have, let's say I have a mortgage of 100,000 or some sort of debt. So that's a liability. My net worth will equal 100,000. So that's 200 minus 100 equals 100. That's the simple way to think about it. Net worth is basically how much you're worth. It's the amount of money minus your liabilities, how much you owe.
Yep, exactly. And this is the thing too. And I think it can get confusing because there's a difference between having any debt whatsoever and being in debt. You can have some debt, right? Like if like to take an example right now, my husband and I have $600,000 of mortgage debt, but we own $1.2 million as the asset value of our real estate. So if you think, oh man, Lauren and Eric have $600,000 of they're in debt, 600,000. Well, not really, right? Because we have these assets to back up that debt. Where you get in super trouble is sometimes, like, for example, like a car. does this a lot. Like you buy a new car, you don't put very much down. You get in a situation very quickly where, say, your car is worth 20 and you owe 25, right? And then that's contributing to negative net worth. Student loans, another way. You I'm sorry, Steve,
No
your
worries.
degree doesn't get to be on the asset side of it, right? There's no, I got this finance degree or whatever, and that has a value, right? That doesn't get to be worth $50,000 on my assets, while my loan is just $30,000 on my liabilities. That doesn't work that way. So kind of the easiest way to get a negative net worth really quickly is going to be your student loans, or if you finance a lot of things on credit cards and you start paying the minimums, or if you go kind of underwater on a car really quickly. And net worth too, I just want to mention this really quickly. When we're talking about like a statement of net worth, which is a really kind of fancy way to talk about when you write down your net worth, there's, you have like your cash, which is like not just like your cash under your mattress cash, which you shouldn't do, for a lot of reasons, but so you have that, that's going to be like, your cash equivalents, CDs, whatever, really things that you can have liquid in like 3 months. Then you have your investment assets, right? So that's things like your investment real estate. I'll go ahead and say crypto. We'll put that there. I'm not going to put that in cash. And then, like your retirement accounts, your stocks, whatever, that's your investment assets. And then you have your personal use assets. So this is, I think, where people get tripped up a lot with net worth. And I happen to be a believer. I can't believe it's even a belief thing. It seems like it's just a fact, but that your house, your personal use assets contribute to your net worth. They just don't, they're not, it's just a different portion of your net worth, right? It's not your investment assets. So what do you think about that, Steve? Does your primary house, for example, does your jewelry, does your furniture, is that part of your net worth?
I would say it depends on how you use your primary residence as an asset. Like if you,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you mentioned house hacking. If you can use your house as like a house hacking method, I mean, you bring in an income, which is using your house as an asset. But if, let's say, you don't use your house to do any house hacking. You don't use it to bring any income through like Airbnb or anything else. You just use it to live in. And as next 30, 40 years, you still live in it and you die in the house. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the house actually really hasn't brought you any money in.
Right.
And I think that's where people, they argue about it. It's like, oh,
Right.
it's not an asset. And some people say it is an asset. But you have to realize it is an asset if it brings in money, and it isn't an asset if you lose money.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's the thing too. If you want to live and die in your house, using that in your net worth or thinking about it, I mean, I guess technically it's part of your net worth, but like
Yeah.
it's not net worth that you can tap, right? There are some cases where people, they buy this big house, they have a bunch of kids or whatever, and then they live in this house for a long, long time. And the plan is to downsize in retirement. In that case, I think you can call it, part of your net worth, right? Even maybe your investment net worth, because,
Yeah.
and you can use that, right? Because you're going to sell your house for $1 million and then buy one that's 250,000 or whatever these numbers are. So that's interesting. I just did want to get your take on that. So everybody, and it's something that I want to say about net worth. I posted a blog about it recently when me and my husband kind of crested the $1 million mark. Don't compare yourself to other people. That, like, I just think it gets dangerous, right? What you want to do is compare your net worth to yourself and to
Yeah,
see
that's
if you're
right.
going in the right direction, right?
I totally agree on that. People have different situations. People live different lives. I mean,
Yeah.
I live in Taiwan. I'm an English teacher, but what I make and what I invest in is different than someone else living in the States that's working as a teacher. We live
Mm-hmm.
different lives. Um, right now, I probably wouldn't own a house in Taiwan just because it's incredibly hard to get into. There's lots of money, more money. It's probably cheaper to buy a place in the States than it would be where I'm living. And so, and plus the rent, if you want to rent a place, it is way cheaper than a mortgage payment. So our
Right.
choice is to rent because the money works out. It's the
Yep.
mathematics.
Right. There's some other countries which probably people don't realize. I read a real estate book from Australia, and they were talking about how you need to have money every month to cover the difference between what that place costs you and what your rent is, what you're getting, right? So you may have to, in order to have an investment property, you may be collecting $300 a month less than it costs you to run that property, right? Which is that's a mind-boggling idea to me and probably most people in the United States, because of course the rent is going to be higher than what our costs are, or else why would we do it?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've read something like that in Australia. It's called negative gearing, I think, or
Yes,
negative.
you're right. Yep. I'm sure it's like any tax codes, right? They're trying to incentivize you to do certain things, but that blew my mind. So yeah, the real estate markets definitely don't work everywhere like they do here. So why would you buy a place if you need like a ton of money and then you have to pay a higher payment than you would be paying in rent?
Yeah, and it's like you said. I mean, everybody's situation is different, and so
Mm-hmm.
you can't look at someone's situation and say, "Oh, my net worth is not high enough because I'm not like so and so." Well, maybe your spending is different. My spending is definitely different than your spending, and so then why should I have a the same net worth as you do?
Right.
Um,
No, you shouldn't, right? Like we did a Twitter Spaces recently, and we had Tom, the frugal gay, on there, and he was talking about like his properties in Ohio, and they're like $100,000. And then like Clint was on there from Vancouver, and his property's like over $1 million. And it's just, why would people that want to retire in Ohio and people that want to retire in Vancouver, why would they have the same net worth? It'd
yeah,
make
yeah,
absolutely no sense. It'd make absolutely no sense. So just compare it to yourself, right? I think you should track your net worth. I think you should know if you're heading in the right direction. You should track your spending every month as well, just so that you know. You need to know. You need to, especially when you're getting started out. I think once you've been kind of aware of your spending and aware of your personal finance habits for a long enough time, you kind of get this intuition about when things are going off track and whether your net worth's going up and whether your budget's on track. But especially when you're getting started out, until these things become a habit, you really, really need to track them.
yeah. And I also think with tracking your net worth, I think you need to make goals for yourself.
Mm.
I
Hmm.
mean, what is your goal? Why do you spend money? I was talking with my wife's cousin the other day, and one of the questions, I mean, she just started saving lots of money, but she's a banker, and a friend of ours said, "Hey, why do you save your money?" And she says, "I don't know. I'm just saving." And we're like,
Yeah.
"Well, what's the plan? What's your goal? Why are you doing this?" I mean, yes, saving's great. Having a net worth is great, but what is your final goal?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great point. It's like we're talking about with you having travel. Like you need to have a why, or else I think, or like a goal, or else I think you can get knocked off track.
Yeah, if you don't have any goals, I mean, let's say, all right, I just hit 100,000 net worth, yay! Now I'm just going to spend the rest of my money. Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
why?
Right. You don't know.
Yeah, I mean, why? I mean, yeah, 100,000. That's a great goal, but what is your goal when you're saving money? Do you want to retire? How much do you want to retire on? How much is, let's say, a comfortable retirement for you? Do you want to just be bare minimum? Do you want to like have lots and lots of money so you can travel the world, go on some cool cruises, see like have great vacations, or do you just want to just sit on your back porch drinking lemonade?
Right. And just not work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Good. Great point, Steve. All right. So let's talk about kind of, this is like the epitome of like the personal finance rule of thumb, right? The 4% rule. Tell us what it is.
So the 4% rule, it came out of the Trinity study, which was done by Trinity University. It came out in about 1996. And so what they did was they studied, um, I think, the period from the Great Depression up to about
Hmm.
1996 and seeing what would be a great withdrawal rule, or what would be a great withdrawal rate if your money needed to last for the next 30 years. So if you're retired at, let's say, 60 or even 65, and you plan to live to about 95, can your money last? And so
Hmm.
that's where they came up with the 4% rule. They saw in that great span of time that the safest withdrawal rate would be 4% of your money. And that's just rule of thumb, basically. So you can take your annual spendings. So if you spend $40,000 a year, just for an example, and you times that by 25, then you will need at retirement $1 million. At that point, you can withdraw 4%, which is $40,000 per year, and it will last you for 30 years. Now, as that, they also realize that inflation happens. So if your investments increase by about 7% a year, you got 3% for inflation, 4% for drawing, and so your money should theoretically last. Now, if you really dive deep into it, there's other things going on, like there's taxes, there's
Yeah.
um, lifestyle inflation, and inflation may be 5% like it is this year, but 4% is a good just rule of thumb. And as you get more into personal finance, you realize that it is a rule of thumb, but it's a great way to create goals for your net worth or your
Yes.
retirement. And I think that's one of the
Yes.
reasons personal finance uses this rule is that, all right, 4%, 25% times your annual spendings. Man, that makes it just so easy.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we do need to know. And then you can, like everything in personal finance, you can kind of tailor it to yourself, kind of like we were talking about with the 50/30/20 budget. You can tailor this 4% rule as well. And what I mean by that is my husband and I, we really like real estate. We have a good amount of real estate, but our theoretical plan is to have real estate cash flow pay for our living expenses, right? Like we're talking about those needs that we were talking about earlier. And then we want our stock portfolio and bonds, maybe if we have any. We don't have very much now, but maybe someday. We're young, we don't need them yet. But so have the stocks pay for the other half. So then what you end up kind of doing is it changes the formula a little bit, right? Because you're like, okay, I'm going to need about, say I need like $50,000 in living expenses and $50,000 in like cars, vacations, wine, whatever, right? And so you take the $50,000 and you get like 1.25, right? Because
Yeah.
4% of 1.25 is $50,000. So my stock portfolio needs to be 1.25. And then my real estate portfolio needs to throw off $50,000 in cash flows. And the net worth of the real estate may or may not be 1.25. So that's where you kind of million. That's where you kind of get into this situation where you start kind of trying to tailor it for yourself. But Steve, you make an excellent point where you could end up working maybe too long if you don't know if you don't know what you need to retire. You wouldn't
Yeah,
know when you're
yeah,
done.
and you get people that they'll work till they're 70 because they think, okay, how much money
Yeah.
do I need? But maybe you don't need as much money as you expected.
Right.
And I think why the 4% rule makes everything easier. You look at your money. You said you need 1.25, which is 4% is 50,000. Well, all of a sudden you realize, oh, I can hit that in 15 years.
Right.
Well, that means I don't have to retire at 65, or I can, if I wanted to, I could take a mini retirement. I could quit for like a year or two, or
Yeah.
do something else, or find
Or
something that I'm passionate about.
get a part-time job, right? Or something like that, something that
Oh,
you're passionate about, where then you're like, okay, my retirement is cool. I'm going to have the 1.25 or whatever I need by the time I retire. I don't need to put any more in it, but I just want to pay for my living expenses, right? So I'm going to take this job I'm passionate about, or I'm going to go part-time or whatever it is. And I'm just going to kind of coast. That's called coastify. I'm going to
oh.
coast until I'm ready to retire, right? We got to be careful or we're going to go down a rabbit hole here.
But I mean, that's true. I mean, as you when you realize, okay, I've got enough to cover my expenses, and like you said, maybe you want some fancy vacations. So you got your cash flow from your real estate. Well, I don't have real estate, so maybe I want to pick up a part-time job that I only have to work maybe 15 or 20 hours a week. Well, that can give me healthcare, or it can give
Yep.
me just a little bit of extra kind of pocket cash where, all right, I've got some money for some wine. I can go get that. I got some money to go out to eat with my wife. I got that. I don't have to worry about my living expenses. They're already taken care of. It's just like pocket cash.
Yep. And this is something too where I think it's in Your Money or Your Life. I think it's in that book where we start talking about like money is morally neutral, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Money, like if you once you start to kind of understand kind of just like a handful of basics, most of which we've covered today in 30 minutes, you start to realize that if you understand these things, you can make money and the system work for you and make it so that you can just free up your time and your money and your efforts to do kind of whatever you want. And that's what makes it so powerful. I also wanted to mention, going back to the simple path to wealth, JL Collins actually himself goes by a 5% rule.
Oh, really? He does.
Yes. So, well, that's the thing. 4% actually is considered to be relatively conservative. In the Trinity study, the only 2 years that didn't work were like 33 and 34 or something. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
the worst, like in the depths of the depression. So, like, other than that, you could basically do 5%, right? And if you have, 1 or 2 years of living expenses in cash and the market goes down and you transition to using your cash, you can kind of live by more than a 4% rule, which I've heard people talking about lately.
Yeah, and
So JL Collins said he
I
takes
think
out 5.
one of the guys that created the 4% rule, he came out I think a year or two ago and said, "Yeah, 5%'s fine." The way the markets have been going, you can live off of
Oh,
5%.
oh my God, you can do 10% rule the way things have been going.
And
Don't do that.
yeah, but it's true. It's 4% is a good conservative rule. It's a way that I mean, once you get your goals down, once you get that money situated in 4%, you'll realize, oh, I've got enough cash savings. I can last 1 to 2 years off my cash. I can last, and then when the market's back up, that's a dream. All right. I'm back
Yep.
to living off my portfolio, and then or you can invest the extra cash into when the market is down. And
Yeah, exactly. Good point. Good point. Well said. So,
that,
is there anything else you want to add before you wrap up?
um, you know, I think we covered a lot of these subjects pretty well. I think both of us. You're very knowledgeable, and I'm very knowledgeable, and I think we've done great.
It's like we write about this all the time or something.
You go to one of our blogs. Oh, yes.
Okay, there we go. So managing money is a huge part of adulting. Understanding budgeting, the 4% rule, net worth. It's basically table stakes if you're going to start building some personal finance knowledge. So Steve, I'm so grateful you came on to talk about these things today. Why don't you tell people how to get to your blog and other ways to get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. The first way to get in touch with me is, go to my blog, which is thefrugalexpat.com. You can go on there. There's at least one article a week. I say at least. You can then sign up for my newsletter onto that site as well. If you go into my blog article, there's a way to sign up for the newsletter, and I send out a newsletter once a week. There's also, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at the Frugal Expat #1, not with the number sign, but just the one. And I tweet every day. I've also got blog articles that come out, so you can read those. You can interact with me and follow me. And
Perfect.
that's about it.
Perfect. That's how I met you. You guys know this by now, but I'm going to keep telling you anyways every single time. You can follow me on Twitter at Adulting is Easy. I'm also on Facebook. I post sometimes there. I'm really most active on Twitter. You can email me at realadultingiseasy@gmail.com. Somebody asked me earlier, if I want to join the podcast, how can I get in touch with you? Emailing me is going to be the best way. realadultingiseasy@gmail.com. You can show support at patreon.com/adultingiseasy. Join my dad. Give me some money every month. And then thanks for listening, everybody. Hopefully, Steve and I have made adulting a little easier for you.